So we got the news after the show last night that Robin Williams died at the age of 63. Apparently, he died of a suicide. Authorities say it was asphyxiation that killed him. At the beginning, it was a little murky as to whether or not it was conclusive that it was a suicide. But earlier today, in fact, maybe 2 or 3 hours before I'm coming on the air here, we learned that he did, in fact, hang himself. So it's a very scary situation. I mean, I think they're gonna do a toxicology report anyway, but it's conclusive. He hung himself, and he suffered with addiction and depression, and he was very open about that. You know, more so than a lot of people who do suffer from either addiction or depression or other mental health issues, and it really threw me for a loop because he really appeared to me, and I know this is so silly because what do I know? I'm just an outsider who's seen his movies and watched like TV shows with him in it. Like, I obviously don't have any extra information or any actual information. He's acting when he's on screen. But it really appeared to me, even through interviews that he's done and just his whole career and his whole aura, he really appeared to be a really, really happy-go-lucky kind of guy, and just like your next-door neighbor. Like a guy who you'd love to have a conversation with, who's just all around, well-rounded, like all these different positive qualities that you would associate with somebody who's well-adjusted. But as I was discussing yesterday with some people on Twitter, human psychology is a very, very tricky thing, man. It really is, and it really does get cryptic and creepy and scary in some ways because depression can manifest itself with no outward symptoms to a public viewer, to an outside viewer. And then there are other times when it can manifest itself with every symptom imaginable. I mean, it's amazing. When you read about depression, you find that, just for example, so if somebody's depressed, sometimes they eat a hell of a lot more when they're depressed. But also, when some people are depressed, they don't eat at all. So it can go in either extreme. When it comes to sleep, the same thing. You could, sleep all day long and not want to get out of bed, or it's the opposite. You can't go to sleep no matter what the fuck you do and no matter what you try. So it's one of those things that it's so hard to put a finger on exactly what's going on in the mind of somebody who's moderately depressed or severely depressed or has other mental health issues. And what was racing through my mind last night, and I really was surprised that it affected me this much, and I don't know whether that makes me seem like a heartless bastard or the opposite, but like I'm sitting there and reading the article about Robin Williams, and I'm like floored by it. And I had this revelation that, man, when it comes to the field of mental health and psychiatry and psychology, we're not helping people as much as we can. We do a terrible job with psychiatry and psychology, and don't even get me started on the rehab clinics all around the world, especially in the U.S. Robin Williams, he checked into one. He checked into a rehab clinic, I think it was last week. Dr. Drew has the show with celebrity rehab and shit. Like, well, you need to understand, and believe me, this comes from a guy. I have a background in psychology. A lot of people don't know that. That was my first passion in life, was psychology. And when I went to college, I was originally going to major in psychology. And through my first year or year and a half, I was set on that. And then eventually I changed my mind and I fell more in love with political science. And there were many reasons why I ended up leaving psychology. One of them was a course, Statistics in Psychology, which I just couldn't understand, so I ended up dropping it. But it was also, I noticed it, excuse me, even more today, that it's not as hard of a science as the other sciences. People don't know this, but what's the psychology Bible, as it's called, the DSM, that's not actually done by using the scientific method and using empirical data and doing, double-blind studies. No, it's done by expert consensus. So you take people who are psychologists and psychiatrists, and they go, well, do we all agree that thing is a problem? Yeah, I think it's probably a problem. Oh, okay, let's write it down. This is a disorder. Did you know that homosexuality was considered a disorder? What was it, until like the 70s or the 80s or something like that? So we're not dealing with something that's hard and concrete, and we're not dealing with people, and we're not dealing with a field that's really invested in solving the problems of depression and bipolar disorder and mania and all the other issues that surround mental health. And look, it drives me crazy because I've read a lot about it, in recent years, and what you find is that the treatments that we use, especially for rehab, total bullshit. Total bullshit. I mean, 12-step programs, which are still some of the most popular when it comes to rehab in the U.S., one of the fucking tenets of a 12-step program is to give your life over to a higher authority. What does that even mean? It's like veiled religion. There's no evidence. I remember, I think it was Penn and Teller. I don't agree with them on everything, but some of the time in their old show Bullshit, they were spot on. And one of the things they did was about, I think it was 12-step programs or Alcoholics Anonymous. And they said, look, this is just, it's not true. The success rate is like 1% or something absurdly low. So they find a way to put the onus on the victim and on the person suffering. And like, oh, if you don't get through this, well, you're just not applying the program right. What does that even mean? Look, what we need to realize is mental health is no different than physical health. The brain is a body part, Slappy. It's the same fucking thing. So if you come down with a cold or a cough or Ebola or any other, now, of course, there's, different levels of how serious a different sickness is. But what we all agree on is that you can't will yourself out of the flu, right? By the same token, somebody that has depression, somebody that has a really serious mental health issue, for people to just armchair pontificate and just say, well, if he applied positive philosophy and life psychology, well, self-help books really work. You idiot. That's not science. You're not solving the problem. Okay? There is no other field where theory should be less welcome than in psychology, because everybody has an opinion, right? Everybody's like, oh, well, my idea of happiness is X, Y, or Z, and you should do the same as me. What the fuck does that even mean? That's not scientific at all. You're just an asshole with an opinion. So empirical research is most needed when it comes to the mental health field, and we don't have it. We don't have it. So when it comes to talk therapy, look, man, I'm very skeptical. Some people swear by it. Other people swear against it. In all seriousness, the evidence is mixed. I'd still recommend, just to get your head clear if you're very depressed or you have some sort of problem, definitely talk to somebody, okay? It doesn't have to be a therapist, doesn't have to be a psychologist, could be a best friend, could be a stranger. I don't give a fuck. Definitely talk to somebody if you feel like it will help. But the evidence is mixed when it comes to that, okay? When it comes to SSRIs, look, man, those are antidepressant pills. They're selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. It's basically a way that they go about messing with your brain to release more serotonin so that you're happier more of the time, right? But the thing is, it's kind of amazing that the studies on that are also incredibly mixed, which I was stunned by doing research because here I am, I'm a hard science guy, and I thought, well, that might be one part that's actual real science. So it turns out it is mixed, and some people swear by it, some people swear against it. It only does slightly better than placebos, if that, in study. But there is the massive caveat that I read a great article from, I think it's Rob Delaney, who said, look, man, I'm writing an article about my severe depression because I had it and my life was saved, and my life was saved by Lexapro. Now, doing more research on Lexapro, what I found out is, oh, okay, that's for severe depression. Most SSRIs, they say for moderate depression or something like that, but it says it's for severe depression, so it really messes with your serotonin in your head and essentially helps people who are incredibly depressed, severely depressed. So, look, I don't want to do a broad, sweeping conviction of SSRIs because there's some evidence for it, but still, when it comes to mental health, psychiatry, psychology, and the rest, I have a background in it. I know a lot about this stuff, more than your average person. It's not as scientific as if you go to the doctor and you get a fucking vaccine, right? Or if you have to take an antivenom when you get bit by a snake. And that's what our focus needs to be, man. It really, because when you look at a guy like Robin Williams, you go, really? Robin Williams killed himself? It shakes you to your core because you go, if that guy kills himself, anybody at some point can get incredibly depressed in their lives and kill themselves, right? And it really, it strikes at something that's so murky about human nature and human psychology, and we're not addressing the problem by actually doing science. So look, man, I know that in the course of me doing this segment, some people are going to look at me like I have 8 heads when I make my suggestions. But as I said last night on Twitter, you need to actually do research on things that we today consider taboo, okay? You have to research the antidepressant effects of things like cocaine. Sorry, you have to do it. There's a reason why people go and take illegal drugs when they're depressed. They fucking work! The problem is they don't take it in a clinical setting, and they don't have proper dosage, and they don't have people looking after them to make sure that they're not stepping over the line or going too far or taking too much or taking too little or doing whatever. You have to look into cocaine, you have to look into LSD, you have to look into ibogaine, ayahuasca, all different hallucinogens and psychedelics. There's a study that just came out recently, people who are in hospices who are on the verge of death who took hallucinogenic drugs, and they felt like all their sadness was gone. All gone. Boom, cure. Amazing promise. Ecstasy, look into ecstasy for antidepressant effects. Look into opiates, look into all these drugs that we consider off the table, too taboo because they're illegal. Look into marijuana, for fuck's sake. We have this mental block where we say, no, that can't be the cure because we want to say that it's a problem in most cases when it's not. Look, some people are addicted, and Robin Williams did suffer from addiction. But think about being in a situation where you're severely depressed, okay, and you were formerly an addict. And you're told day in and day out, no, what you were taking was the problem, okay? The alcohol was the problem, the cocaine or whatever it was you were addicted to. That's the problem. And then you're sitting there and you're going through full-on withdrawals. It could go for years in the sense that your brain chemistry doesn't get back to normal for years. And you're going, oh my God, that's the only fucking thing I want right now. And a whole group of people who are essentially fake doctors because they don't base their information on actual science tell you, no, you can't have that. That's the problem, not the cure. Well, what do you think an SSRI is? What do you think Lexapro is? It fucks with the serotonin levels in your head. That's what cocaine does. That's what weed does. That's what LSD does. Well, they're obviously different drugs and they have different effects. But by and large, what drugs do in general is they fuck with the serotonin, the dopamine, the norepinephrine, the oxytocin in your mind. All the different happiness chemicals. Look, this isn't fucking rocket science, man. Here's the bottom line. If you're somebody who is depressed or you have some sort of psychological issue or some sort of problem, right? You're not cured if you still feel depressed. A lot of people will say through talk therapy, oh yeah, I feel much better, but they don't actually feel much better. And by the way, is that sustaining? If we come back 5 years from now, are you going to say, oh yes, I'm still just as good as I was then? No, it will come episodic. It'll be like waves, and depression can tackle somebody in a split second, and it can have a hold on you for such a long time where people think nothing fucking matters. And they're essentially looking into the abyss, and they're like, what is this all worth? That's an actual medical problem just as big as a virus is, or an infection. It's just a virus of the mind, okay? And we need to treat it like that. You actually need to do research on drugs to cure it. And we can't have these taboos and these things that are off limits because we've already decided that they're wrong. Really? How do we know that? So because some people have done cocaine or done Percocet or whatever and they overdosed, therefore nobody can ever have it and it can never have any kind of therapeutic effects, especially for mental health. But that doesn't make any sense. Have you done any studies on it? Have you looked into it? Oh, actually, when you do, I don't know, whatever small amount, 2 bumps of cocaine over 1 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon, and it's measured, and you don't go any further than that, well, that actually can have tremendous therapeutic effects. But people say that's not possible. That can't be possible because we don't accept it as a possibility, even though it fucking is a possibility. Look, I don't have all the answers. All I'm saying is we need actual science to deal with these problems, and we don't do it. We put people in a box and we say, oh, okay, you're depressed, go to rehab and have somebody speak some bullshit to you, or take this bullshit SSRI and not the one that actually works for severe, the Lexapro one, right? So we're all over the map with not taking the problem of depression seriously. We don't actually look for scientific cures. We look for people, we treat it like it's just, like you chose to be depressed. Like the whole field of positive psychology. Oh, you should focus on your positive thoughts. Do you not think they're trying to do that? What, did they not try that? Like, oh, is that what I needed to do? I just needed to be happy? Essentially, it's telling people to cure their depression by saying, hey, guy, just be happy. Well, thank you. I fucking appreciate that. Now, put a fucking magic wand over my head and call it a day and say, oh, well, now I'm all better. It's the dumbest fucking thing you can imagine. And a lot of the different fields of psychology, I know because I study them, they're largely bullshit. We need to use actual science to fix these problems. And look, for a guy like Robin Williams, man, the last thing I'll say, I know it's incredibly cheesy, and I never met the guy, but he was my childhood, right? All the different movies he was in, Miss Doubtfire, Flubber, those are the silly ones that are interesting and fun. All the others, I mean, he was even movies like 1 Hour Photo, which he did. I don't think it got good ratings, but I loved it. I thought he was fantastic in that movie. He's just a really great actor. Seemed like a really, really good guy. All the reports coming out today are like, yeah, the dude never said a bad word to anybody. Like, all he cared about was helping other people. I mean, just a tremendous guy. And again, I know it's corny, but if I had the opportunity to sit down and talk to Robin Williams before the end and before he decided to hang himself, in all seriousness, I would say to him what he said to Matt Damon in Good Will Hunting.
So, what is it like? Will has an attachment disorder? Is it all that stuff? Fear of abandonment? Is that why I broke up with Skylar?
I didn't know you had.
I did.
You want to talk about it?
No.
Hey, Will. I don't know a lot. You see this? All this shit. This is not your fault. Look at me, son. It's not your fault.
I know.
It's not your fault.
I know.
No, you don't. It's not your fault.
I know.
It's not your fault.
All right.
It's not your fault. It's not your fault. Don't fuck with me. It's not your fault.
Don't fuck with me, all right? Don't fuck with me, Sean. Not you.
It's not your fault. It's not your fault.
Oh my God. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Oh my God.